This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 6:02 on Tuesday, May 6th. Myself, Councillor Terrell, and Councillor Derby are present. Councillor Riley is not with us this evening. So, because Councillor Riley is here, we do not have any minutes to approve. I didn't see any. Public speak time. Anybody from the public who would like to speak about
There
anything?
is, yes, because we never talked about the putting the.
Just say your name and address for the
Oh,
record.
right,
Sorry.
right. Well, I'm Marvin Ward and I live right across the street over there in our apartment 413 in the Cottage Square. And we talked about at one point getting a speed table put in the middle here of this stretch.
On Cottage Street?
Yes.
Mhm.
And you didn't do anything about finding what it would cost.
Well, no, that's we asked Director Nuttleman to be at the meeting tonight, and he's online, so that's why we had him.
And I do have the answer to that question.
Okay,
Good.
well, so we'll. Councilor
Good,
Derby.
but I want to tell you something else too. When you say you're going to do away with 5 towns, you can't, because you have roads that do not tell you that you are in Northampton. I mean, in Easthampton when you get there.
Right. And which we can talk about that. And I looked into that a little bit as well. So
Yeah, I've got it right here. I fixed it out. I did it after last week
Wow.
when I put circles around the places where there is no indication that you are in northeast Easthampton you come from, wherever you come from. Because you come some from Northampton and some from, well, maybe they're all from Northampton, I'm not sure. But there are roads that come off of 66, which does not come through here. It goes over through Northampton.
Right.
And it goes all the way down to Route 20 in the center of Huntington.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've driven these roads.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, and I probably should know as far as, I know they have to be put, and maybe Director Nuttleman knows the answer to this, but as far as exactly where it's defined, where they need to put on the town crossings.
it's
Main thoroughfares, I thought.
so I mean we can I think probably it would be best to get through public speak and then we can jump into that just for continuity.
Mhm.
But I do have the answer to that as well. So I think
Because it's not the question that it's not a numbered road, it's the fact that you don't know you're in Easthampton. Because there's no sign telling you're entering it.
Mhm.
There used to be poles that used to have the lines where it comes through, but a lot of them are gone. I don't know when they were put in. My guess would be late 19th, early 20th century. But I know a road that you can find and see them because it's a back road from Holyoke down here.
Mhm.
And you go down Southampton Road, I guess it's Southampton Road at the top of Mount Tom, and then you turn right on the road that says Line Road. It's Line Road in Holyoke,
Mhm.
and then you turn right, and then immediately left because the road goes down,
Mhm.
and the other things are driveways, and you have 2. You go from Holyoke to Southampton and Southampton to Easthampton.
Mhm.
And there's a time with the signs, they're black poles with 2 names on the 2 sides.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're speaking of because that's on a dirt road. Yeah, I know.
That's right, on the dirt road. And I use that all the time.
Mhm.
When I was working, I was for 14 years on the translation committee of BBC.
Mhm.
I left when I got to be 80, except that I got called back because the person who took it up didn't show up. And so they said, come back, you're not being cuffed. And so I went back for like 2 years or so. And I finally got somebody who is good and is taking it, has taken it.
Mhm.
And it's a woman and she lives here in Easthampton on one of the side streets off of High Street.
We might want to see if anybody else wants to do public speak, just so we can get into the meat of, if that's okay with you.
Well, sure.
Just because I think there are a couple other people on the call and I just want to.
Is there anybody online that would like to participate in public speak?
I don't see who there's there. No,
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Sarah Godin. I had posted a comment on Lindsay's post about the meeting tonight, and somebody that I am not familiar with asked me if I would do public speak, and I didn't have any correspondence with them. I just took it upon myself to take the suggestion, and the post that I had written under her post was about an occurrence that happened on Union Street, but I don't really know that that's really pertaining to anything except the fact that speed was involved. And if I have time to tell you the story in brief detail, I would be happy to.
Of course, it's public speak. You can speak
That's
about
right.
anything having to do with any safety issue. So of course, if you'd like to.
Thank you.
Could
So-
You gotta
could
tell
you
them.
please state your address, please? I know you stated your name. Could you please state?
Absolutely. Yes, I live at 23C Main Avenue,
Thank you.
Main with an E. So my son and I were preparing to cross the new crosswalk to go into La Veracruzana, and I allow him to press the button for the yellow light engage, and I am always certain he's on the spectrum, and he's very excitable, but he's learning to become more independent, and so I still say to him, check 2 and 3 times to make sure that cars have stopped before we enter the crosswalk. And I'm so thankful that that situation happened because there was a car that came from what was Walgreens parking lot, took a right onto Union Street, and as far as I'm concerned, paid no regard to us about, preparing to enter the crosswalk, whether it was just a deer in headlights reaction, whatever it was, but they continued to drive. And ironically, on the opposing side, on La Veracruzana side, was an officer stopped preparing for us to cross. So it was witnessed, and I kept my arm across Philip and I said, just wait a minute, he's going to do a 3-point turn and he's going to pull them over. He acknowledged us, he saw the whole thing. But, so it's not so much just, pedestrians don't look where they're going or whatever. It was certainly a situation where there was speed involved. And even more ironically, it was between the speed bumps. So, it was discerning, it was discouraging, it was frightening, all of the things, but that was my experience, and happy to speak on that. At the same thing, I would like to express the fact that I am so appreciative of the barriers that make sort of the partition that narrows Main Street, Route 10, so that traffic is forced to slow for that crosswalk. And I know a lot of people were up in arms about that, but I couldn't say how appreciative I am for those, because it forces people to slow down. It's countless times where I see people roaming the streets, well, not roaming the streets, but driving the streets in their cars with their music so loud they don't think they'd hear an ambulance or a fire truck. And speed is a constant worry, and it's really discouraging, and you can't control what other people do. But in a nutshell, I'm thankful for those barriers that are in place on that crosswalk too.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you also.
Anybody else want to get involved with the public speak online?
Hi, I do.
State your name and address, please, for the record.
Lindsay Sekula, Mutter Street resident. And I just want to say thank you to the council subcommittee for bringing this back to the table. And I appreciate, Marvin's efforts of bringing this forward to the city as well. I do want to kind of reiterate what I said at the last or one of the meetings at council when this went forward, that I think a larger study would be beneficial, but at the end of the day, what I think will really matter is the enforcement. And now that we have a new or a potential new chief of police, I would just suggest to the council that they connect with that individual to talk about tools that the city can offer for support for department needs. Really to prioritize the community and sustain traffic enforcement. I think at the end of the day, enforcement is going to be key in mitigating traffic and speeding concerns. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Anybody else?
I have people go right through the yellow lights on Union Street, even when you're in the thing.
So we want to close public speak now? Yep. Okay, well, that's all for public speak, so we'll close public speak now. Thank you to everybody. Public Safety quarterly report.
Yeah, we don't have any, so.
Business, no new business. So continuing the ongoing business, which is,
Yeah, and
so would you
so
like to?
I can just give a couple updates. I know Greg's here and he could probably further elaborate, but I did reach out to Greg to ask about the speed humps, and we specifically talked about the portable ones, like the one that's off of Park Street.
Greenwood?
Yeah, and it's expensive. It's 15,000. So and you have to drill. I think Greg said you have to drill 121 holes in for it, and so I think one of the things that would make sense for us to ask is if I know Northampton does a lot of speed bumps, speed humps. What does it cost to, as opposed to doing a portable one, to do a permanent one like the ones they have in Northampton?
Mm-hmm.
And they're pretty prolific around some of the neighborhoods in Northampton. So I think that it's yeah. So not just actually like Nonotuck Street and going into Bay State on River. I think it's Riverside maybe. There's quite a few. So I mean, that would be one question is, the cost comparison. Here's the thing, if we're looking at speed humps, there's going to be, everybody is going to want one for, so there would be a triage, like prioritize, where do we think that the speed bumps would have the biggest impact for the cost? Is there grant funding available for this? Is this something that would get funded out of Greg's budget, which might this might not be a huge priority with all the infrastructure stuff that's going on. So
I can tell you, I watch what goes on that street all day and all evening or night, and it's rough. It's horrible.
Yeah, there's no question that we're in the same boat as every other community and probably the state, if not the country. I think since COVID, driving has deteriorated in a pretty significant way. As far as, and I don't know what the psychological or what is the impetus for that, but something changed.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think that's one piece that's not necessarily related. I mean, that's just like general traffic safety. As far as where the signs would necessarily need to go, I know Greg had gotten back to me. I asked for 5 different, if we were going to put 5 gateway signs up, what would roughly be the budget? And he felt that would be about $1,500 and we would be responsible to get those signs made. So I mean, the cost for that is not prohibitive. And I think I do have it up right here, which is the opt-in here is you can, it's suggested that you put these signs at entry points into the city. It is not mandated, and you do not have like most communities don't put it at every.
Right, but that physically would not make sense.
It wouldn't necessarily make sense, but the main arteries that are coming into the city,
Northampton Street, Florence Road.
The 5 that
Line
we
Street.
identified.
Right, and Florence Road is one that does not get any notice that when you enter.
Right. There is a sign that says, so we have gateway signs in some of those locations, which basically say there's a parking ban through November through April or whatever. I can't remember the dates. And so that's one of the things that we have. Another gateway sign, I believe, is on Holyoke Street. It says we use unmarked police cars.
Mhm.
You know, so this could even be potentially mounted to one of those pre-existing signs. I mean, that's something we would have to check with Greg to see if that might not be best practice, but so we are not obligated to put these at every junction.
Correct.
Where Easthampton crosses into
Just
another
the main
community. Just
thoroughfares.
the main ones
Yeah,
would
but
make
You
sense.
gotta think of what people who coming in don't understand or do.
Agreed. But with that being said, a lot more people are entering via Northampton Street, Florence Road, Line Street than they're entering on that dirt road that you talked about coming down the backside.
Right, but
Yeah.
they have the things, you don't
Right.
have to do
Right.
it.
Yeah.
But come up from Southampton on Primary Redwood Road, there's nothing there either. And people do come up from here.
Mhm.
from
So, I mean,
Southampton.
As you know, if we decide to adopt this, then I think it would make sense for us to connect with Director Nuttleman to say, you know, to really hammer this out.
Now you have two things that come down out of 66 into
Loudville.
Loudville, and there's nothing there either. I've driven it, and there's no indication when you reach in.
I think we might have had those on the list.
Well, I don't know.
But anyway,
I have
that
it
is
here.
that is you know, as we continue through this process, I think, you know,
And a
that's
big
something
thing,
that we can work out.
right, a big thing, I think this is twofold, is gonna be education.
Yeah.
And enforcement. And last meeting we had, Officer Alexander at the time was saying,
Right.
Chief Alexander now, that they were in the process of hiring a full-time traffic officer for the daytime, which would certainly help with that enforcement, which we don't have right
So
now.
he's the one who's the.
Yeah, he was.
He's the new chief of police, yes.
chief of
Yeah.
police. Well, that's good. He's a good man.
Yeah.
Good man.
So, and I think, you know, I think
That
that,
coupled with proper education, I think would really help the situation.
right. I mean, because
When I talked about the plate, what do you call it, the plate, he thought that was right. I
Mhm.
was right. That
Yeah.
That's the best way to get it done.
Right. And it might be, it's a cost issue at that point. You know, we have to figure
I
out
know
what we
that,
can afford, unfortunately, like,
But maybe we can get some money from somewhere,
um,
because I watched them go and things happen.
so I think one of the things that is, you know, I mean, like when we present this tomorrow night, I mean, there's nothing you can do to stop a bad actor from acting badly. But I think what's important is if you ask 10 people on the street what the speed limit is in a neighborhood that's not posted, 9 of them wouldn't know.
Right.
And so what this allows us to do is it allows us to raise awareness. And it is something that you see every time you come into the city. And that gives you, at least you can't play dumb.
you can't claim ignorance.
That's right.
And, you know, I have, you know, I've known Chief Alexander for a long time, and I don't think that he would balk at all to, you know, ramp up enforcement when he has the personnel to do so. And as this comes online, to maybe give people's, if it's not egregious, give people a warning and
Grace
say,
period. He had mentioned a grace period
Right.
during enforcement, just so
you're
people. can
going
acclimate about it.
30, you're going 35 and a 25. You know, and before it was 30 and going 35 was probably, but you know, now it's 25. So I have a feeling that he would be willing to, you know, participate in some sort of exercise like that for the first couple months. And at the end of the day, like, we're not doing our constituents any favors when we have people literally coming to almost every city, every meeting saying that traffic is out of control, speeding, reckless driving, and we have an opportunity to do something that's relatively low cost, that can raise awareness and that can help educate the motoring public. I think we'd be negligent if we didn't try to make this happen.
Agreed.
So, you know, we already have a base speed limit.
And this is just lowering it by 5
Lowering it
miles
by
an hour.
5 miles an hour.
Exactly.
And then
posting
advertising.
it, and posting it,
Yeah.
correct.
So I think, you know, for me, I think that is reason enough to make this happen. You know, I think, you know, I mean, if you look at our agenda, I mean, how many of those are traffic related, those items? I mean, we have West Street traffic.
Yep.
We have ongoing, you know, traffic rules and order.
Yep.
We have
Citywide speed limit.
citywide speed limit,
And pedestrian safety.
pedestrian safety.
All four.
It's all of it. And I will say, like, you know, I was driving down Line Street the other day, and someone in a giant pickup truck coal rolled. Like, I don't know if it was someone in their yard, but they literally just stepped on their accelerator in a big diesel truck and spewed out all this black smoke, and was, you know, probably going 50 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, you know,
And they've recently
that
put a
going-
digital speed limit sign on that road too, I've noticed.
it was, I think it was, either, it wasn't near that, but, you know, I mean, a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit is not going to stop that person from doing that. Right.
I think it's going to raise awareness.
But I think hopefully as we push towards trying to, like, make sure that, you know, everybody knows that this is one of our priorities, that's a priority of the city, that, you know, we can try to alert people that in situations like that, you can file a report. You can say, hey, I saw this truck, it was this color, whatever. And you know, the next time an officer's in the neighborhood and sees that, they might be on the lookout, you know. But I think enforcement is critical.
Yeah, and I agree with you that passing this is not going to stop that guy from doing that.
Nope.
This isn't going to stop everybody, but by having this in place, it'll make people think. It'll
Yeah.
at least give them pause, and they'll think.
Well, and I think the other piece of this is that it also gives our officers a little bit more leeway to because right now, I mean, let's just say, you know, if someone's going, so if the speed limit right now is 30, you know, a lot of people take the liberty of about 10 miles. So if someone's going 40 down a thickly settled neighborhood, and they're just like, whatever, I'm going 10 miles over the speed limit, that's like normal.
Say Phelps Street, that's thickly settled.
Right.
Street.
And that is 40 miles an hour in a residential neighborhood, or a thickly settled, like 40 miles an hour down Cottage Street, is crazy. Right. So it gives the officers just a little bit, like that 5 mile less gives them an opportunity to pull somebody over
They might not normally pull.
they
over.
might not have been able to before.
Right.
Right. And so I think that piece is also important. It gives our officers flexibility to pull somebody over if they need to, if they feel that there's a need. You know, so I think that is, you know, those are the things that I think would be important for us to establish tomorrow, even though we know those things already. And as far as like our other items, you know, pedestrian safety, I think our public comment fits right in. We did, I think maybe it was 2 years ago, potentially 3 years ago, we increased the local fine for someone not stopping for someone in a crosswalk locally. So before, if police, you know, if one of our officers pulled someone over for not, was a state penalty, you know, $100 fine. So in Easthampton, we have a local fine, which I believe is $150.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so I think, you know, one of the things that we can do as a public safety committee is to, as we have a new chief, is to just say, hey, want to just put it out there that a point of emphasis might be in people not stopping for people in cross. Like, I deal with this. I dealt with it yesterday. It was pouring rain, and I was on Pleasant Street crossing over to, from the little parking lot across from the Keystone building into the side entrance where there's a sidewalk and there's a sign and it took me on each side 3 cars for me standing in the crosswalk. I'm in the pouring rain, 3 cars on each side before I got pissed and stepped out. It's like, hit me,
Right.
you know? And so people had to stop at that point. So, but that's, you know, I think once people start getting nailed with tickets for not
Awareness.
stopping for pedestrians, like you're gonna think next time when you see a pedestrian standing in that crosswalk.
Yeah, all it's gonna take is for you, so, oh, I know so-and-so who got a ticket for that. And that's gonna make you think. Cause another example like that, I was crossing, Cottage Street yesterday, my wife and I. Car coming from the mountain stopped, and I wasn't gonna walk until I, this one, right by.
Goes right through.
And then I waited again and the next person stopped, but you just can't take it for granted either, because just because this person stops.
So which one are you talking about up here?
I was crossing the road right across the street from Amy's, where the
From
city
Amy's.
parking lot is,
Oh, wow.
going.
And that's a huge parking lot.
Yeah.
That's a huge
crosswalk.
Yeah, it's on the side.
Yeah, Yeah, and I was crossing to this side, and the person coming from the mountain stopped, but the person coming this way just shot through, and it was the second person that stopped. It's just, you just have to be aware, and you have to raise awareness.
Maybe since Greg's here, we can just ask him really quick if we, the difference between the portable speed bump and a permanent one, just to get an idea.
Mhm.
Since pedestrian safety's on there, just because I have no idea, but Greg might. So, and he's here, so we might as well ask him something.
Can you expand on that a little bit, Greg, please?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we start talking about a permanent speed table, we have to look at, we're actually getting into the road itself. So we'd be milling out a decent portion of the roadway. We can't just go pour the new asphalt for the speed table on top of the existing road, because the snow plows will just push it off next winter. So there's more to it than that. We also have to look at the drainage in the area and what, other factors with where we can place it, them. It's not as simple as just going and putting one in. The other thing we can do with a speed table is create a noise, like an acceleration, deceleration, suspension noise problem. If you put one on a street, like, people are going to hear that da-dunk, da-dunk all the time. So it can change from, we can solve one, maybe get people to slow down, but maybe create a different problem.
Right.
So,
do you have an idea of what the cost difference between, say, a permanent one that would be milled and made of asphalt, as opposed to the temporary one that we use?
it's really hard to say, because there's so many other factors that come into play with when we're installing one, and how much of the road we'd have to mill out, or where, or how wide the road is where we're putting it. There's just a lot of variables, but probably the 30 to 40,000.
Oh, wow.
But really, that's kind of a pretty, it's called like an educated guess, right? Because some of the roads are significantly narrower than others, or we may have a drainage problem we have to solve to put one in, a certain spot, but not in another. So it could be a pretty fluid number.
And Greg, if we were redoing a section of road, similar to what we did with Route 10 from, South Street to the center of town last year, would that be the time to, look at potentially adding permanent speed humps?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Especially if we already have a project going.
Yeah. Okay. So that would make more sense. Okay. Well, thank you, Greg. Appreciate that input.
Yep.
I don't have any other questions.
I don't either. We already have a public hearing set for this tomorrow.
Yep.
At 6:15. So we'll.
Yeah, unless there's anything else on our agenda. I mean, I think the pedestrian safety one, I think maybe one of the things we can do is, as we welcome in Chief Alexander, it might just make sense for us to just touch base with him and say, hey, we did pass this local fine for not stopping for people in crosswalks. Seems like it's becoming more of an issue in addition to the speeding, and maybe he can make that a point of emphasis with his crew
for the new safety.
Yeah, and for the traffic officer
right.
too. And I think it will only take a couple people to get that ticket before.
Because word will get around, and I think that it's good timing.
Yeah,
with Chief Alexander just starting. I think we can start with a clean slate, for lack of better words, and meet with him and let him know what we want to do and see what he thinks is appropriate, and then move forward, as a unit.
Yep. So sounds good. Other than that, I don't have anything else, and I had stopped taking notes when I started doing other things. So let me catch up.
Yeah.
Well, I have nothing else. I did.
I don't either. So I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.